Okay.
I need to see if it's connecting on the LinkedIn side.
I'm gonna put my phone on do not disturb, make sure I don't get an interruption.
Oh, welcome, Shahara, to my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. I'm so glad to be here and excited to have a discussion and all of that good stuff. Yes.
Yeah, and this is attempt two. Our first time did not work out due to
Right.
technical issues, probably on my side. I'm going to admit that. Yeah.
Yeah, because today we are, I mean, it's perfect. I'm excited. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, and I think it's perfect timing with it being National Engineers Week and also Black History Month.
I
But
know. Like
yeah,
this is like good timing. This is when we can really talk about some good stuff and it's a good time of year. I love it.
yeah. So just to introduce you a little bit to the audience, we actually met through LinkedIn virtually, and
Yes,
I think I've told the story on LinkedIn. You're the very, very, very first person I ever met in person.
I love that. I
You
love
are, you
I love
are.
to I love doing that, like meeting people in person in real life, like I'm so glad you reached out because I was just like, oh wow, yeah, let's make this work. Let's meet up.
Yeah,
So
and I never expected that. That
yeah,
was
I'm
the
so
power
glad.
of being on LinkedIn, and I remember, I looked at your profile and saw, "Oh, she has so many followers and all these people." I'll
Yeah.
just do, like, a follow or something and kinda, like, passively, follow and see what he says. And
Yeah, you
then
were like,
yeah.
I do remember you saying like, "Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanna," and I was like, "Sure, yeah, let's meet up." So it worked out, and it's very intriguing. It was intriguing to see like your background because when it comes to other STEM professionals, it's really exciting to see it, and then to see that you were doing, financial. At that time, I think it was more like financial advising or
Yeah, I
planning.
was advising back then on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So, and then now, where you're at, but it's just it was just really cool to meet a fellow engineer and all that good stuff. So,
Yeah, and in the financial services
yeah.
industry. So yeah, you used to live not that far from me in Texas, and you
Yes.
moved since. Yeah,
Yes.
so unfortunately you're not
Yes.
local anymore, but
I know. I know. That's a bummer. It's a bummer because I'm looking out and it's a bunch of snow. But like a lot of Texans have been complaining about the cold
oh,
lately.
it is cold here. That's why I'm wearing like a whole sweatshirt in my house. I think it's 20 degrees. It's just unusual, but it's not
That's
snowy. We didn't have
okay.
precipitation, so it just got really, really cold, and it's like gonna warm back up to like the 70s, like after the weekend, which is crazy.
That is crazy. But I remember that Texas weather could be up and down. And I'm in Ohio and it does the same thing, like just about a
Oh,
week and a half ago, we were in the 60s and now we're in like the teens.
yeah, yeah. But I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more to everybody else.
Okay, great. Yeah. So my name is Shehara Wooten, and I'm a certified financial planner professional. And I have my degree in electrical and computer engineering. And years ago, I decided to change careers, and I'll just kind of tell the story so people can get a context of my journey. But I was living in Philadelphia. It was like my first job. Off of the training program. I was in a technical sales and marketing training program with the corporation I was working with. And we were in electrical distribution, power and distribution segment of the industry. And yeah, I was living in Philadelphia and I heard about the Urban League Young Professionals was having a financial empowerment meeting. And I said, I got to get over there to check it out
Mhm.
and went to the meeting. They had tables set up around the perimeter of the room and banks and insurance companies. And I walked up to and to me, I felt like it was the first time seeing a financial advisor. And so
Mm.
it was a bank, and I walked up to the bank, table, and I said, okay, this is first time talking to a financial advisor. Here's what I'm going to say. And I said, hi, I am Shehara, and I'm 25 and I want to retire by 30. So what do you got for me?
Oh, that's aggressive.
Yeah, right. I didn't know what else to say. And it literally popped in my head, like, say this. And so that's what came out of my mouth. And he looked at me like, okay, and so anyway, what happened was I knew 25 was young. Well, I knew 25 was young. I knew 5 years was a short period of time, but I felt at that age 30 was ancient, and it's not at all. But at that time, 30 seemed very like, whoa, that 30 years old. So anyway, I ended up meeting with the advisor in downtown Philly. We ended up not working together. So I found out the hard way. I thought I had, and I think it probably was a Roth IRA, but nothing was open. I tried to reach him to see like what did we do, and never heard from him. And so I really surmised that he might have just been starting out. There's a lot of turnover in financial advising. And then he
Like
went
he
on,
ghosted you? Like after he said he was going to open it?
completely ghosted me.
Oh no.
Like I never heard from him. I've never seen him again in my life. And now that I'm in the, industry, I know how I could have found him, FINRA, broker check, all that good stuff. But yeah, so he ended up, I think he went to another company, but never heard from him, realized there was really no account opened. And so I just tried to get my hands on everything I could to learn, because I was like, you know what, I got to learn this myself then. No one's going to take care of me on this. So my church was offering financial literacy. And then my dad gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like a
Oh.
system to read, because I had already read the book, I believe, by then. But he bought this system for me to understand the quadrants and all that stuff. And then Think and Grow Rich and Purpose Driven Life. So with all those different
Mm.
things, and then What Color Is Your Parachute? I just kind of looked at all those different things, and I was like, I really like this, and I don't like what I'm doing right now. And so I said, you know what, let me go ahead and look into changing careers. So that's what happened. And
Wow.
after so many years, I ended up in 2004 changing careers and joining for the financial services industry. And so I've been doing this, gosh, like over 20 years now. Over
I
20
didn't
years.
realize you transitioned so early. Wow,
Yeah.
you're 25, you knew. I'm just curious. So back then, what was your version of retiring at 30? What were you gonna do? Like,
I had no idea. I just knew it wasn't going to be what I was doing right now.
was it because you're so miserable in your career? So you're like, I just want to settle down
Probably,
at 30.
yeah. Like I just said, not this. I'm just not
Oh,
going to
you
do
just knew
this.
not that. Okay. Okay.
Whatever this is not it. Like I don't want to do this. And so what I really realized is that I needed to really understand my purpose. And so that's where, everything happened at the same time, looking at Think and Grow Rich, looking at
Mm.
Purpose Driven Life, What Color Is My Parachute. I just was like, what do I really want to do and be when I grow up? And I
Okay.
knew, and I was in all these different internships, and over the summers, and I just looked at what was happening in the places that I was working, and it might have been what I was exposed to, and I was just like, I don't want to be that, and nice people. Like throughout my internships, I had some really nice engineers and people that I worked with, but I just looked at what they were doing, and I was like, that is not what I want to do. And so it could have been, some of that exposure. But then even then, um, I was in like a sales engineering role,
Mhm.
and it was in power. So power distribution and control. So not very sexy or anything, right? Like circuit breakers and, network protectors and just these big industrial, like 1930s looking things, and that go in plants and utilities and power plants and things like that. And I think it just, for me, just wasn't as interesting. And so I do think there's a broad amount of things that you can do in engineering and all of that. And that could have been something I could have stayed in if I found something that I really enjoyed. But I knew that at that time, with the information that I had, that I enjoyed what I was learning and I wanted to help people with that. And so just
Wow, that is very bold
yeah,
because
it was.
like,
I didn't
were your
tell my
parents
parents. What
upset?
you say?
Were your parents upset?
I knew like my dad wouldn't be like he wasn't nobody was upset, but I
Okay.
just knew like they were just like, okay, well, we know that she's not enjoying it, but I just felt like I've always gotten support. That's what I'll say. Like no
Oh,
one's
good.
ever like outright said, we're upset at you or anything. I think they just really wanted me to be happy. And when I think back to the times, there were some tough times. There were some tears, and so they were just. I think they were just happy that I was doing something that I enjoyed
Uh,
or that I made that decision to like change. And I just looked at it like, wow, I just know that at 29 or what have you, because it took a few years before I actually changed careers. I
okay.
just, I think it was just kind of like, you know, I think this is a good time. And I think admired that because I looked at my parents, I looked at the people at that time, and they would work at a company not enjoying it for like 30 years to get a pension
Yeah.
and then retire. And I think, just I didn't want that life. And I think they were just kind of like, well, I'm glad she did that, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't, they might have thought, I didn't have the guts to do that. And so I think that's kind of like what went through various folks' head when I left. Some
Wow, but that's
yeah,
good that you got a lot of support because I could see
yeah,
people maybe questioning, like, why leave something that you're doing good at and you can make
yeah,
so much money and now you're gonna get into
right.
an unknown profession where you gotta start all over,
Yes.
and it's not a guaranteed salary and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the role that I went into was more like a guaranteed salary, so to
Oh,
speak.
okay.
Yeah. So I went into like the wholesaling side of the business. So with financial services, there are people in the industry that actually sell to financial planners. So financial advisors. So those annuities, those mutual funds, life insurance. There's the wholesaling side of the business. So that's what I ended up getting into, which was really neat. And so the wholesaling side, you got the wholesalers and the retailers. So the wholesalers are the folks that their clients are financial advisors, and then the
Mhm.
financial advisors, their clients are the general public.
Okay. Okay. But then eventually you do move into solopreneur and business owner and
Yeah, so 2004 was when when I changed careers, and then I worked as a wholesaler, internal wholesaler until 2009. And then and I was in Philly, right? And
yeah.
so when I moved to in 2005, 2006, um the position I was in decided to open up another office in Phoenix. So I said, let me leave Philly and do that. So uh, and so I lived in Phoenix, and while I was in Phoenix, I worked for the annuity internal wholesaler position for until
Okay.
2009. And January 2009, I was out and about in San Diego vacationing, and I got a call, and it said, "Hey, we're gonna have to lay you off." And I got that call, and I don't know, I think I felt like, it was time, it was my time, and the
Uh-huh.
market had tanked, like, and we had done all this expansion.
Oh, the
And
year
so
after 2008.
yeah,
That, yeah.
so
Okay.
January, yeah, so the market had done what it was gonna do because it does that, right? And and so they were like, the company I was with was like, we're gonna have to close the office. So what you can do is he said, and I think I was at a museum while I was taking this call. You can either go to Des Moines, Iowa, or you can go back to Philly, or you can take a severance package. So we'll let you think about that. And I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to Des Moines, and I'm not going to go back to Philly. I've already been there. I'm going to stay here in Phoenix and I'm going to take the severance package. So that's when I ended up moving into, I think it was like May, or I think it was May. But I was interviewing like that whole time. And then in
Mhm.
May, I got accepted to work with on the retail side of the business. And so that's when I became a financial advisor with a national firm and started that role in June of
Mm.
2009, and built from scratch, using their techniques and everything, built that from scratch, finding my clients, knocking on doors literally in June, in 100-degree weather, 120, 110, 100. Yeah, literally finding people, finding clients, just out there prospecting. And so that was something else. But yeah, so that's how I did that. And then from 2009 until 2016 is when I actually learned. It was March 7th, 2016 was the day that I learned that there's another way. And because I was starting to feel like, wow, I changed careers because I wanted to help people, but then I didn't feel like I was really helping people like
Okay.
I wanted. And it wasn't aligning with my values. So I was just like, there's got to be something else, but I don't know what it is. And then one day, like I said, March 7th, I was in my office. No one was in the office. It was just me and my assistant. So it wouldn't have been anybody else but me and her. But she left for the day. I called a friend of mine who I had just heard left that firm we were at.
Okay.
And I said, I'll call her and just see how she's doing. And she was just like, she picked up, and I said, I'm really, just trying to figure out what you're doing. And she was like, well, I started my own tax practice, but I also started my financial planning firm. And I was like,
Mm.
what? And I didn't know you could do that. I always thought you had to hang your hat somewhere, right? At a
Yeah.
broker dealer. And I didn't know that. So I said, what did you do? And again, it's just me in the office. My front door is locked. I'm in a like strip mall. And so it's just my office.
Mhm.
And the front areas where my assistant would have been sitting, but it was like 6 something in the evening. She was gone for the day. I still shut my office door and I said, wait a second. You gotta tell me, like as if somebody was gonna overhear it. You gotta tell me what did you do? And she said, yeah, I'm starting my own firm. So then that's when she told me how she did it. And I was just so intrigued by that. And so I was like, wow, I think this is what God wants me to do. And I was ready to go the next day, but he was like, sit down, and
Yeah,
I
make a
need you to be
plan.
more calculated and plan this out. And I was like, okay. And so I think by April I signed up, and then for this it was a company that could help me start my firm
Okay.
as a registered investment advisor instead of the broker dealer side.
Yes.
And so I left the broker dealer world in July. So July 1st, 2016 is when I left the broker dealer world. And um, Arizona, I was in the state of Arizona. I was working on becoming a registered investment advisor with the state of Arizona, and I couldn't do it while I was working at that company. So I
Oh,
had to,
right. I'm sure you can't. Yeah.
not at all. So I knew once I turn in my resignation, I need to be ready to go out the door and lock it behind myself.
Oh, yeah.
I
They'll push you out.
Right. And the way that they worked, no one was really around. So I had to just kind of do it at my own honor, I guess,
Uh-huh.
because so no one could really push me out literally, because July 1st, 2016 was a Friday.
Oh.
And no one's gonna do that. So I just decided 2 or 3 on Friday that afternoon. That was gonna be after I got all my stuff out of there, my personal furniture and all that, and locked the door behind me. I had sent a little email to one of the, I didn't even know who my higher up was going to be because we were pretty independent. So I said, I think technically this is the guy. So I sent that guy the email, and he must have gotten it because by the time I was meeting someone for a coffee, like a tea
Yeah.
meeting in real life, because we did a lot of in real life stuff back then. But yeah, I met her at a tea shop because I love tea. And I told her, we sat down, I'd never met her in person before. And I said, I just left my firm. And she literally got up from her seat, ran outside, ran back and forth in front of the storefront, and then came back in and was like, "Oh my gosh!" and gave me a high five. And so never looked back. And then I had to take my Series 65 to get to start my firm with
Yes.
the state of Arizona. So I scheduled to take my exam on the 12th of July, and I passed it, thank God. But believe me, between July 1st and July 12th, that's all I did was study. My
Well, I don't know
birthday,
how you did that so quickly.
I I was looking at everything and I was just like, wait a second, how long was I supposed to give myself to take this exam?
And you're like 3 months if you
Yeah, they said you
hours
want
a
to.
day.
Yeah, they were like, you want to give yourself, like what you said, maybe 3 months. I think it was like 6 to 8 weeks minimum. Because I was just like, what did I do? And I went in and passed. So thank God for
Oh,
that.
you're so lucky. Yeah, it's like
Thank God.
24 units for people that aren't aware, and each unit is different. It's not the most in-depth test, but it's like so many different topics and concepts and economics and
Yeah,
bonds and interest rates and all this stuff.
it was, yeah. And it was less like when I was studying, well, this part was more the law, on the Series 65, it was more the law aspect of things, like blue laws, blue sky laws, and compliance. But yeah, I was questioning myself, like, what was I doing? And so, but I left out of there, and with a passing rate, because that's all that matters,
Yes.
and ended up sending that over to the state of Arizona and my compliance team that was working with me to help me get everything going. And then July 14th, 2 days later, the state of Arizona said you can now open up your firm.
Yay!
Yes, so
That's
that
huge.
yeah, so it was huge. So I always declare July 1st my literally my Independence Day.
Your
So
Independence Day. You know
my
what's so interesting about your journey? I guess I never realized this. I didn't realize you weren't angling to do that the whole time. You kind of were doing different things along the way, and then you kind of just figured out the next thing,
I
and then you
always
figured out the
wanted
next thing.
Yeah, so I always wanted to work with clients, like end users, but I needed to get in and around another way. And so the way that I got in, but I didn't plan to be a wholesaler. It just kind of
Yeah.
happened. Like I always thought that I was going to go straight into being a financial advisor.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy with that experience. And I didn't know about wholesaling. I didn't even tell that part, but I was flying from Philly to Columbus, which is where I'm from, for Thanksgiving. And I sat next to a person who was studying that similar materials that I had studied to get my Series 7 and my 66.
Mm, mhm.
And I said, what are you studying? And he said the Series 60, the Series 6. So anyway, there's these different series you got to study to get into a broker dealer firm. So I was like, wow, and what are you going to do with that? And he said, I'm going to be a wholesaler. And I said, wow, that's okay. I'm interested because I'm trying to, there's so many things, there's some details I left out, but I had gotten my Series 7 and it was about to expire,
Mhm.
because I was still working in engineering and all that, and engineering sales is what I was doing, but it was about to expire. And I knew that it was about to expire because it's like a 2-year window. And
Okay.
so at that time, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I didn't want to lose it. So yeah, I was just thankful to God. I just feel like he just directed me, and I just kind of was like, oh, I didn't know about wholesaling. And he told me what it was. And then I just started learning and looking at
Mm,
wholesaling positions.
yeah.
And they would see a engineering resume and just would not accept me. Like nobody, it was crickets. And then I ended up calling a friend of mine because I saw a wholesaling position at the company she worked at. And this is where I said, you know what? I heard that, you got to have connections. So I called her. She was in the HR department of another department, but under the company, but she was in another department. And I said, hey, I'm looking at a job over here. Can you get my resume over to those folks?
Yeah.
And she did, and I got the interview, and then that's how I
It
got.
helps, I think, so much more in the financial industry. I did not realize that because in engineering, you're so used to your resume and your credentials really speak for you.
Yeah.
Like you have this killer resume
Yeah.
and you don't have to do as much networking because you're going to get the call for the interview, right?
Right.
In financial services, yeah, you're right.
I didn't
it's a
know.
different
Yeah.
ballgame for that type of stuff.
Yeah, I just felt like I was like, and even I think I would have at that time, I was thinking even for engineering, like any position, I need to talk to somebody. Who do you know? How can you get my resume to the proper person? And it worked that time. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was just it's just I think a lot of God's providence throughout this process, a lot of learning. And so then yeah, July 2016 is when I opened up for business, and you have a non-compete with your companies and things like
Mhm.
that. And but we've been growing ever since. And I've gone through another evolution where I'm like, instead of me doing everything, I have like another company that I've linked up with for more back office support and things like that. But to the client, they don't really see that different.
Right.
But for me, behind the scenes, it's just a little bit
It
more
makes your life
support.
so much easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was just, I was I'm still the chief cook and bottle washer, but I guess I'm not washing as many dishes now. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But you had such an interesting evolution. I love how, like I was saying, you just figured out what you're going to do next when you're actually in it. I think the other thing that paralyzes a lot of people is they have to know the whole path, right? They have to know every step ahead, and you don't know, but you got to eventually where you're at, and like you said, God's providence, and there's definitely some similarities and differences between engineering and financial services. One thing I was going to point out is very true. I think a lot of people don't realize this if they aren't in financial services. When you're talking about leaving your firm, like, yeah, you got to leave. Like,
yeah,
I didn't realize because it's different. Because like in engineering and in corporate,
you get like,
you announce it. It's a big thing. You give your 2 weeks. You have
right,
all these happy hours and parties, and everyone wants to take your. And then I didn't realize, like, when you leave a financial services firm, like they're just like kicking you out the door right then and there. They're
absolutely,
shutting off your email. I
yeah,
mean, there's just like no like.
yes,
I was shocked how different it was, and I thought it
yeah.
was just me. And then I was talking with other people in financial services, and
Oh
they're
yeah,
like, "Yeah, that's what it's like."
yep. And I had known about that because of other people who had left. And so I was just like, okay. And so the night before, because I'm in the strip mall, we've got
Yeah.
cleaners on this side, we've got a mail, like a post office, business over here. So I had to wait, until like 7, 8 o'clock at night to move my stuff out because I didn't want them to, tell my
Oh, I
assistant.
know. I
And
know.
so, yeah, there was all these different things that I had to do. And so fortunately I had some friends, the friend that I told, that told me that what she was doing, her and her family came to my house, came to my office with a truck, and we moved everything to my house. But yeah, and then, yeah, and it was crazy because I think July 4th was that Monday. So it was a holiday weekend. And so on the morning of the 5th, that's when everything went
It
crazy.
really hit, and they knew. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And they were like,
my former boss, when he started his own RIA, same similar thing. Well, actually, he let his boss know he was starting and in the process, right? He
yeah,
didn't keep it secretive. Then when he told him, it came through from the state of Texas,
yeah.
he got abruptly fired over text.
That is so interesting. Yeah. If I would have told them when I started the process, I would have had to leave then.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
So when
yeah.
I started the process in April, and yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
would have had to
Yeah,
leave.
that is one huge difference between engineering and financial services. There's no love lost when you're leaving. And especially if like what you were doing was you're starting your own little firm, right? And of course you're not in competition with them, but yeah, they don't like
They
that.
think you are. Yeah. And it's just crazy. Yeah. And I was very nervous like throughout the whole process because I did have, there's vendors like wholesalers, I told them, I
Mhm.
said, hey, I'm looking at your products, I'm looking at the things you guys do, but please do not ever call my office. And I did have a few call my office.
Oh, how
And
interesting.
yeah, and my assistant was like, yeah, so such and such mutual fund company called. And I was like, oh, okay, really interesting. And then I go to my office, like, what? Why did they call? They're not supposed, because they are not, they weren't, they didn't have an agreement with the company I was with. So it was just kind of odd. Like, and I don't know if she knew, I don't know, but she looked very suspicious. And I was like acting suspicious too.
Oh,
Oh, my heart though. It was just like I just had heart palpitations, and I told them. And I honestly, it was funny because I didn't do business with them when I came on to my RIA, because I was like, you guys almost messed up my,
you
you
blew the
almost
cover.
blew my cover. You almost blew my cover.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so there were all kinds of things happening that was getting me nervous, because I did feel like I was just like sneaking around.
Oh yeah, I've definitely had that feeling when sometimes, the best time to get another job is when you actually have a job. But
Yeah,
there's something, you just feel very two-faced for that
yeah.
tiny bit of time where you're like, well, I don't want to tell anyone because I don't have an offer in hand, but I'm looking around or talking to people.
Exactly. And the same thing happened. Like, I could hardly sleep when I was able to give my notice to my company that I was at back in
Oh,
2004. And they were just, I mean, I was so excited to lay those resignation letters on their desk. I didn't do an email. We weren't doing that back then. We were printing things out, and I folded it in an envelope and left it on their desk so they could see it when they came in the morning. And yeah, it was just utter shock and silence that day. But it was the Friday before. I guess I like holidays, but it was the Friday before Labor Day.
wow.
And yeah, and they were just like, and I was like, I have to start on Tuesday. And typically you're supposed to give a 2-week notice. And
Yeah,
they were like, okay, well, we're gonna, I think I mean, they said the nice things, we're gonna miss you and all
yeah,
these kind of things. But they let me, I didn't know how that was gonna work out, because I knew I should give 2 weeks notice. But I knew also that the new company wanted me to start that Tuesday. And so I just said, I'll just work it out. I think, yeah, to your point, I just kind of did stuff and then just let God work it out and things work out. I mean, I wasn't trying to be inconsiderate, with my notice and all that. So I
mhm.
was just like, but they just said, no, we'll act as if. I think they acted as if I gave a 2-week notice, which was really nice of them to do that.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I got
Well,
vacation. I
if
mean, I
you're a
got
hard worker, I think people can see your intentions more than
yeah.
sometimes your actions and all that. They
Yeah.
know like you have a history of how you've been with them, and that
Right.
reflects more upon you than the exact way you left, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So they were like, that's really cool. And maybe you could be our financial advisor. They didn't fully understand what I was going to be doing, but that's the kind of
oh,
stuff that they were saying. Yeah. So it was neat. But because it was a vacation, because Friday, the Friday before Labor Day, a lot of people take off.
yeah.
It was like a skeleton crew in the office. And we had lunch and we all ate at the conference room table. And I just kind of told people, hey, I won't be here anymore. This is my last day.
Mm.
And there were people who weren't there because they had taken vacation. So when they came back, it was like, oh, Shahira's gone. So
Oh. Well,
very,
how do you think you were so certain, or what helped you decide to make these certain pivots or changes in your career and life?
yeah, I think, just understanding my values, understanding like what I
Mhm.
wanted to do. So like, especially the move that I took in 2016. Um, Literally in 2015 I was recruiting. That I remember a client saying, but you were trying to recruit my husband to be, with this firm. So in 2015, I was, telling people, come on board.
Yeah.
But then my eyes were opened into like the things that I really wanted to do. And when you say, what do you think happened? Honestly, I really, really did some prayer, some major prayer and soul searching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something I'm getting from you, that you're very astute and you self-reflect a lot. I think probably more than the average person, because I don't think a lot of 25-year-olds self-reflect a lot.
Yeah, yeah, right. And and you're right about that. And so yeah, but this, like, in 2016, obviously I wasn't 25, but yeah, some of the same things I did back in 2004
Yeah.
were the same things I was doing in 2016, but like at a deeper level. So it was just kind of like, wow, I really want to do the things that this leaving engineering is a big decision. And so I want to make sure that what I'm doing is aligned with the vision, that I have. And that's to help to close the wealth gap, to further financial empowerment, financial literacy. And I needed
Mhm.
more freedom. And so I'm, creative, and, like, I think that's the cool part. Like, you don't see a lot of financial planners producing content on LinkedIn, um, because
Or
a
it's
lot
bad.
of, say that again.
Or it's bad, or not very good content.
Yeah, and the content that I was allowed to produce, at my previous firm was just like this curate, like this stuff that, like you said, is bad, but that was what was approved, and and so yeah, so you don't have as much opportunities for creativity. So I needed to be more creative. I needed more options. So those were some of the reasons why. And then also, I needed a different business model. For me, I couldn't just work with folks. I had a lot of folks, and that's where the wealth gap really became more pronounced for me. I had a lot of folks that would work with me and didn't have a lot of savings, but they had a good income, really good salary.
Mhm.
And so the way that I would, be able to get paid with the company I was with at that time was you had to have some assets built up, and if
Yes. Yeah.
you didn't have assets built up, then I was like, okay, well, maybe we can open up an account. And I started a lot of people from zero. And I enjoyed doing that. However, that did not pay me at all, unfortunately.
Yeah. For people who don't understand, when you get paid under a model of assets under management and people don't have a lot of assets, you don't make money off them. That's why they're kind of the most underserved people, which is
Yes,
unfortunate because that's one thing I didn't like about being a financial advisor. You're kind of chasing
yes,
assets. You're chasing people that already have a lot of money and are
right,
doing really well. And how do you serve these people that are like, I just want to start a Roth IRA? And you're like,
right.
yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I would have. And I was just like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to open an account, and we're going to start with what you have. Um, and that's a cool, really cool and noble thing. But
Yeah.
then I was struggling.
You can just focus on educating them about everything rather than making any, it's
And
so
I
funny when
didn't
you
mind doing
calculate.
that. And so
Yeah.
that was the thing. It was just kind of like, I love educating. That's what I am. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher. Like, I love educating. But literally the way the business model worked, if you did a $50 account, I would get $1, and then I would have to give 60 cents on that dollar
Yeah.
back to the firm. So I got 40 cents of that.
Yeah.
And then
People don't
literally
understand.
on a $50 a month account. So 40 cents, and then you get 40 cents tax, like all these different things that happen. So um it all accumulates. But I had to find a model. And I remember, I think even a client was like, wow, this is really risky because you're meeting with me and I may not work with you. And so I needed to find a model. So I ended up finding a fee only model. And so I work with assets, but I also work with charging for advice as well. And so
Yeah.
that was the aspect that I was unable to do before, was to charge for advice. And I was
Yeah.
giving advice.
Yeah, I really like that because, like, we're talking about just looking for people with only assets. And, when you're charging under the assets under management plan, you're not really compensated for your time. So, what people don't understand is when they hire a financial advisor and then they want them to walk them through budgeting or I want to know, I don't want you to just invest my Roth IRA. I want to understand it. And I want to understand more about the stock market and what you mean by diversification and all this stuff. And it's like,
Yes.
well, these people are not incentivized to spend that much time explaining it to you.
Right. They're
Yeah.
not. And so so I still did it, right?
Yeah, it sounds like you did it anyways, but like just
And
putting
I
it in
was,
perspective for people, like you're probably losing money off that from a
yeah,
time,
and they had
energy.
no idea. They
Yeah.
had no idea what was going on in the background. And I finally, like, the blinders were lifted off my eyes. And I was just like, yeah, you know what? I need to be like more like an attorney, like a CPA. Like, this is a profession. And even when that client said, wow, this is really risky, you're giving me this good information, but am I going to be invoiced before I leave? And I was just like, no, you won't get an invoice. So when I walk out and I go past, your assistant, she's not going to charge me anything. And I was like, no. And they were like, okay. And, I slept on that a few days. And I said, yeah, that is kind of odd.
Yeah, I think it was when I was at the firm and my boss started pressuring me about when are you gonna start bringing in some people have some more money? And I'm like, well, I wish they had some more money and they would be investing it. I can't make them have more money to invest if they don't. He's like, well, we really need some people who we can make some money off of. And it's kind of unfortunate you have to kind of think of some people like that, but that's what it is when it's that model, right? You have to,
Yes.
yeah.
So I had to find a model that aligns better with my values and both of us make it a win-win, right? Because you don't want your financial planner to be a pauper or anything, like,
Right. And then you don't want to have that resentment towards people, right? Where it's just like,
yeah, 'cause it
oh,
can't,
are we going to be on the phone for 2 hours?
yes, yes.
No money.
Right. And that all of those things can truly affect you. So, I had to really get that true business owner, entrepreneur mindset, to really value my time, look at revenue generating activity. I don't know, and then divide it up. So if there's some pro bono work I'm going to do, it's going to be intentional. This is the pro bono. These are
Yes.
the hours that I do that. And then this is the business. Because if you're going to be a business owner, you have to be a business owner and generate revenue. And so the mindset, I had to shift that too, and it's even been a journey, even working in my own firm, it's been
I
a
agree.
journey,
It's
getting
so funny because I'll meet people who say, I just want to help people. And it's like
yeah,
everybody wants to help people. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. That's not a
yeah,
noble thing, but it's like you
yeah,
will burn out
yes,
if it's just helping people at your expense and
right.
you're not discriminating at all. But yeah, this later phase of your life of being solopreneur and business owner, I'd love for you to talk more about the niche that you serve because it's so unique.
Yeah, so I do a couple different things, right? So I have my registered investment advisory firm, and with that, I'm more broad. So I work with people one on one, and mainly STEM professionals. With that, not as niche down, because I started in 2009, and I still, get people from. I used to, if you could fog a mirror, you were a potential client back in the day.
Yes, everyone. Yeah.
It was just literally like, oh my gosh, you could potentially be a client. So um, it's been a journey even in that regard. So to get down to the niche that I do now with my academy, it took a while for me to get there, but basically, I always had this STEM focus, so would always put it out there that I work with STEM professionals, but then. Um, if you were a potential client that met me years ago, I've had people say, hey, I knew you were going to be my advisor. I just needed to get myself together. And they weren't, they weren't STEM professionals. So I still brought
Okay.
them on, right? So I have a good amount of folks like that. But when I decided that I was going to start my academy, which I did, it's been through phases, but 2019, I would say, is when like the LLC opened. But
Okay.
it wasn't until 2023 that I just said, you know what? I got to pick a side. And my coach told me that
Mhm.
too. You know, broad, she said broad equals broke and specific equals sales. And I
Yes,
was
I agree.
like, wow, that's profound. And I went through a couple iterations and I said, oh, I broadened it. And that's why she was just like, no, that doesn't work. So I ended up looking at my story, like what I just shared with you guys, being an engineer, coming out, you know, in Philly, going to the financial empowerment as an engineer. And I just thought, how can I help more 25-year-old Shaharas? Now, I come to understand that, you know, my mindset was different for a 25-year-old, but so now it's more a broader range. So I help ambitious mid-career Black women STEM professionals.
Mhm.
And so I had to really dig into like who I help and who what that niche will be, what that small segment of the market would be that I would help to close their wealth gap. And so, so basically, you know, they're frustrated, maybe too many options, making good money, feel like maybe
Mhm.
they're a late starter, all these different places that they're at to get to that place that they have that clarity because they have, you know, a plan and they have structure and they have resources. And so
Yeah.
that's what, you know, that's where I'm at now with the academy side. So I'm very focused in on that, zeroed down on that niche for that. And I'm more broad with my one-on-one, but you know, zero down with the academy. And so I have a program called the Wealth Gap Closers Method. And so most of my LinkedIn content is geared towards that, even though folks from all walks of life can glean from the tips and strategies that I share.
Yeah.
But you know, with this, I'm on a mission to help at this point, and it'll grow over time. But at this point, 100 Black women in STEM who are feeling in that place where they're feeling stuck and ready to, you know, make a change. I'm helping them secure their financial freedom and get to a place where they don't have to rely on anybody for their
Yeah,
security.
I love that. That's so specific. I was reading in a book, it was talking about how everyone does, like I was talking about, you know, I'm not making fun of them. People are like, I want to help someone. It's like,
Yes,
who and how and when
yes,
and how many
yes,
and in what way, you
yes.
know? And you have to have that vision and mission.
It took me a while though, because I think as a business owner, you think, well, I'm going to exclude so many people. And how am I
Yes.
going to stand, you know, how am I going to stand my, you know, and it's still challenging, but I will say it's funny. I had a financial advisor reach out to me just the other day on LinkedIn. And she said, oh my gosh, I saw that you work with Black women in STEM, and I want to work with, she's an engineer too, right? And she was just like, and I want to work with Latino civil engineers or something she was saying. And
Okay, cool.
yeah. And I was just like, wow. And she was like, so how long did it take you? And I told you guys, I started in 2004, started, you know, working with folks one on one in 2009. You could fog a mirror. That was my phase. 2016, I was like kind of wishy washy on that and
Mhm.
work with people in STEM. And then it wasn't until 2023 that I said, you know what, I'm gonna do this. This is what I'm gonna do. This is the market. These are the folks I interviewed. You know, I would say almost hundreds of folks, Black women in STEM, to understand what they're
Mhm.
going through, their challenges, their questions, and so it's helped me. I've been studying them. And for today, you know, not just thinking back to my experience, but
Oh, I agree. You have
you
to
know,
keep up with people.
yes,
Yeah.
keep up with them, ask them questions, learn what they're, you know, doing and dealing with. And, you know, lifestyle creep is real, all types of things. And so these are things that I can address and help them with on their
Yeah, and
journey
it
to
really
wealth.
is so critical to talk to people in your niche audience.
Yes.
And even if you're farther, but your husband's also in engineering too, so you still got that connection. But it's
I
it's a male perspective. It's a male.
Yes, yes. So he's still in it. And yeah, and I've been, you know, in different chapters in different cities that I've lived in, you know, in Swee and Nesby. So I've still had, you know, my connections that way too.
Yeah, I
And
think it really helps if you're somewhat related to your niche field. I know it's not. requirement. It's not
Required. Yeah.
necessary, but the I always tell people it's easier for me because I am part of my niche field. It's like I didn't pick plastic surgeons or something, or
Yeah.
or some field
Exactly.
that I have no correlation or connection to. So
Yep.
it just makes it easier. Yeah.
I think it does because it's easier. Like when people, if I went to a sweet luncheon, it's like, oh, what's your background? Well, electrical and computer engineering, and now I'm a financial planner. Like it, and it just resonates better.
Oh yeah.
And I say better, but I know plenty of financial planners who are not doctors, but that's their niche. Plenty of financial
Yes,
who
or
are
the
not,
20 somethings who their niche is 50 plus entrepreneurs, and it's like,
and they're 30 years old.
yeah. It's like they're gonna tell someone else how to run a business better than they.
Right. But somehow they make it work, right? So I think, a lot of it is mindset too, And so for me, I had to remove friction. So, and there's imposter syndrome and all this
Oh
stuff. So you
yeah.
got to remove all the friction. And this was easy for me. This was the path of least resistance. I'm an engineer, I'm a financial planner. That's going to be easy for me to just go ahead and connect, with people in that way, and to share that story and not feel like I'm a fraud or something. I just have a harder
Oh
time.
yeah, I think you're so critical because you've been in. So just to give people background, financial services people poop out super quick. I mean, the failure rate in the first year is like 90%. So anyone that's been in it, you've been in it for 15 years, is
20
crazy.
years.
The last,
Oh yeah, you're talking about since 2009.
yeah, if you talk about the exact beginning of it, you've evolved
From
over
the
time, but
retail
yeah,
side. Yeah,
technically,
we got to
yeah.
count all 20 years. But yes, yes. So yes, there's various phases that I've been
Yeah, that should speak for it yourself. But it's
in.
funny how maybe sometimes people don't think that's an amazing thing, but when you see how many people, fail out or stop or quit, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's something. It's something else to see that. It
yeah.
really
I'm
is.
sure you've outlasted so many people.
I remember, at my previous firm, oh my gosh, just, meeting with folks. And yeah, I mean, I think what happened, so 2009, when I started with the retail side of the business, working with folks one-on-one, all of the folks in my cohort, by the time I left, I was the only one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was the only one. Yeah, when I think about that, and everybody left and it doesn't mean that they left the industry and all of that, but they left that company that I was at.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so and some of them are still financial advisors, with broker dealers, but they just were not at that same company. So they're I mean, we're still financial advisors and financial planners, but but yeah, we're nobody was at that company. They all
Oh, interesting.
other thing I think, people who are working with a financial advisor or financial planner is to understand that they probably won't stay at that company. So it's more so you're working with them and your relationship is with them, even though it seems like your relationship is with the firm that they're hanging their hat at. But financial advisors do move around. So just even if there's not a lot of retention, like if they don't even stay in the industry, that's one subject. But many rarely stay at one company for years and years and years, just like any career. No one's staying
That
at,
is very, very true. Yeah.
yeah,
And you're really creating that relationship with that person more than
yeah,
just the company. But
right,
yeah, that's hard for people to understand. I remember when my financial advisor sent me some paperwork because he was changing firms. I was so confused.
yeah,
And she said, I'm not going to sign this
yeah.
until like
Like,
she
what
called
is
me to have a discussion about. I think he thought it was very, like you're talking about, very common, like, oh, well, she's just going to follow me over as I'm changing firms. And I'm like,
right?
no, I want to hear about this.
Yeah, and so many people that I brought on, at my previous firm, they had never worked with a financial advisor before, never worked at a firm before. So
Mhm.
I didn't get a lot of them to come over because I think they were just kind of like, I'm gonna stay at this company because it's like a big name and like you
Oh, really?
startup. So I didn't get a lot of them to come over. And when I looked at everything and looked at like how I was changing my business and my niche, it wasn't a fog and mirror niche anymore. Um, they probably weren't a good fit anymore anyway. But yeah, I didn't get a lot of them to come over, but I'm the one that introduced them to
I
this.
know, it's so funny because you hear people say, "I love my Edward Jones financial advisor. I love my Raymond," and
Yeah,
you see they're always putting the company's name in there
yeah.
more than the name of the person they're dealing with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so that's what I noticed, and I was just like, well, it actually was for the better. It was like a pruning. I'm doing the garden system right now for hydroponic gardening. So I'm
Oh,
learning about all that, and I'm going to be pruning and getting some good leaves and lettuces and greens tonight. But when you prune something, you allow for it to grow bigger, and so that's how I had to
oh.
look at that situation. Was that, not everybody is going to come on board, and some did finally over the years.
Mhm.
But by cutting things off and cutting and pruning, that allow for things to grow more robust and bushier and more.
I agree. I totally agree. At first, it's scary because you're like, "I'm losing all these people." That's
Yes,
but
yes,
some of them are probably just not the right people for you, or
yeah, they
they'll
weren't the right.
selected themselves out, so it's okay, you know?
Exactly, exactly. They weren't the right for the new model that I had. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I went completely digital and I wasn't mailing things. So, you had to adjust with that. So there was a lot of things, and I was using Zoom, and then by the time 2020 hit, my clients who had never used Zoom before were like, "You had us on this." And now we have to use it, but it seemed like every time we met, like we would meet
Uh-huh.
on Zoom, and it was like a little bit of a learning curve initially, but
Oh,
in
interesting.
2020, yeah, but in 2020, it was just like,
Yeah, with COVID.
this is what we have to do. Yeah, because of COVID.
Oh, how interesting. So you were early to kinda adopting tech and things. Because if you think about it, over the span of your career, there's all these evolutions, like email. People are finally getting more comfortable with email, right? But
Yes.
you remember a time where people didn't want to send anything over email, like, especially if it's financial or personal, right? They're so wary about it, like, "Can I
Yeah.
fax it to you?" You know?
I know. And it's so funny because in 2009, fortunately, email was common and they were used to that. But I definitely remember in college, that email was not. And when I talk about like when I left that office of that financial
Mhm.
advisor, when I went to downtown Philly, that huge bank, I left with a folder and it had papers in it, right? So I had to complete a paper application to open up my account.
Mm.
And so, yeah, and so I remember looking back through the paperwork, like, what did we do? Like, like what happened here? Because I'm calling you and I don't see anything when I go into this bank site, and then you didn't really automatically go to the site. You called the person, back in 2004. Well, no, it wasn't 2000. It was like probably 2001, 2002 timeframe. So yeah, you didn't do all those things because of technology. But yeah, to your point, I've been through a lot of phases, but fortunately, most people were used to the email side, but they definitely were not in 2016. They were not used to meeting like this on a
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, on a consistent basis. So in 2020, that's business did grow really exponentially, because of that. And I'm a virtual location independent, and that's how I started out in 2016, completely location independent. I didn't meet people, brick and mortar or in an office. So it was a very unique, a disruptive business concept at that time, and
Yeah.
now it's very normal.
Yeah, yeah. Because I remember you were saying you didn't rent an office or anything, you ran it out of your
Oh, and so I will say though, because I was getting used to the concept, I did, talk to Regis and I said, "Hey, every once in a while I might need to come here and meet up with a
Oh,
client."
okay.
So they did let me do like an hourly pay and just pop in. So there was some really cool businesses that supported me. And I remember because I knocked on so many doors in the neighborhood that I was in, that my office was in for my other company. I remember a real estate agent opened up a real estate office in a Dunkin' Donuts. So one day, yeah, it was very unique. And it was right across from my office. And this is right in Phoenix, on Thunderbird Road, guys. So anyway, if anybody's, but there's a Dunkin' Donuts on right around that area. So I ended up going in there and I saw him in there and I said, "Hey, I've knocked on your door many times." And he respected that, right? He was a real estate agent and they do that. So I said, "Hey, so I'm no longer at the company across the street. My office, I'm not the person in that office anymore. But when I meet with clients, would it be okay for me to, And he said, "Yeah." And he didn't give me a key. I didn't know that these doors were unlocked, but they were unlocked like the whole time. But they were literally these offices, the completely glass. But so you could see, you could order, you could just go up to the window, or not the window, but go up to the cashier and order a donut across that way. But
Oh,
yeah,
that would have been so cool. That is the very ideal office place to
right?
be.
Isn't that such a neat? And so I thought it was cool, but I had a few clients met with me there and I could see it. There's this, I don't know, I'm not gonna
Like a little bit of judgment.
so yeah, let me explain. So there's like a smell actually in Dunkin' Donuts. It's not like, to me, like a regular coffee shop. There was like a burnt smell. And so in the office, it just kind of encapsulated that burnt smell. And so I did have a couple clients like, "Oh, this is horrible."
Well, I never thought of that or noticed. I guess I don't go enough. To me, the most offensive is Subway. Every time you go, there's a smell inside the Subway.
Bread. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I don't like it. And it's just,
Yeah.
it's Subway.
Yes. And there's this smell. It's like when they take stuff through the toaster oven, it's just almost like whatever the crumbs are, they just constantly.
Oh, I see what you're
It just
talking about.
permeates the whole the whole room. So that was it, encapsulated in that office. So that was sometimes a challenge. But yeah, but then I just got used to doing Zooms and I was just like, now why are we driving a half an hour to get to a meeting, to meet about an hour, to drive a half an hour back home, now 2 hours out of my life? So and then people started gravitating towards that as well. So I know we kind of jumped on a different topic,
but how progressive.
yeah. And people would tell me like, this is what I would get though. They would say, "Oh, that should save you a lot of money." And it wasn't.
Well, they jumped to that first.
Yes.
Huh.
So it wasn't just about saving money, although it did, because I didn't have to pay for office space. But that was many times the first response back in 2016 from some people.
Oh, interesting. I would have never thought of that.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. And maybe it's just like people are used to like, they come to the fancy office,
Yes.
they go serve some coffee or
Yes.
bottled water.
And this wasn't my clients. This was other like professionals, when I made the announcement.
Oh, interesting. You're like, okay, I could care less because you're not going to pay me for anything.
No, it wasn't anything, but it was just kind of like, "Oh, well, congratulations. But yeah, so you're not going to be in an office? Wow, that's well, you're going to save some money then." So that's
Well, that's interesting. But if anything, you were like predicting the future. That was the way everyone was going to go eventually.
right. And and I had no idea. And it was just kind of like, I just wanted to create the life I wanted and be able to find. And I knew that if I didn't have any boundaries, and I could work with people all over the US, then it didn't matter where I was,
Right.
But even in 2020, it was still something to get used to. I remember February 2020, I was leaving Orlando and moving to Dallas. And so,
were you?
yeah.
Wow. Because March 2020 was like when like COVID, like
Literally.
You're lucky. If you waited longer, that might have been delayed.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I was telling everybody like I'm leaving, and they were like, "Oh wow!" And I had speaking engagements lined up
Okay.
in person in Orlando, and everybody was like, "Well, since you're moving," and in my mind, I was like, "I can do it on Zoom, but I'm gonna wait.
Mhm.
I'm gonna wait to tell them." And so we canceled events, because I was moving. That's why we canceled, right? March 9th, I fly out to Dallas and end up going to Dallas, and COVID, we knew about it, but we were still able to get on a plane March 9th.
Yeah.
By the end of that week, there was no more toilet paper in the country.
Yeah, I remember how quickly it changed. I actually had a trip planned
Yes.
to China in March 2020.
Wow.
Yeah, obviously that got canceled.
Yep. Yeah.
But I was really holding out hope because I was always one of those people. I was very optimistic. I was thinking like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's, and I had a friend.
Yeah.
Well, I still have a friend. She's a nurse, and she's like, no, this is serious. I think it's going to come to the U.S. next. It's going to be a big deal. And she was warning me about it.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because I'm just not one of those people that I don't know. It's not that I'm not pessimistic. Maybe I don't. I was thinking it's not. It's a thing in China. It's a thing in Asia.
That's exactly what we all thought. We all thought. In January, I was on a cruise ship. We jumped off the cruise ship, and they were quarantining people on cruise ships all over the country. And I was like, okay, surely that's not going to come to us. And yeah, I remember, being on the plane, and I was just like, should we wipe our stuff off? Like, and I should have been doing that before anyway. I always felt like I should have been doing that, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And we get off the plane, and I move in. And then again, that Thursday, I remember there was just this frenzy, that there's no more toilet paper. And fortunately, we bought some on March 9th. That was a Monday. And, because I had moved to a new city. So I had to get toilet paper. So thank God I went to Kroger that evening. After all our stuff moved in, I went to Kroger that evening to get some toilet paper and paper towels and just things that I needed. And I was like, that'll hold me over till this Friday or Saturday. And then I'll just like really get what we need. And everything was gone.
Wow.
And, yeah.
It changed so quickly.
It changed in a twinkling of literally a blink of an eye. And like you said, we may not have been able to move if it had been if it had been a week later, everything was shut down by that point,
Yeah, you would have not been able to get on a flight. Wow.
Yeah, we wouldn't have been able to even get on a flight. But yeah, it was just kind of like, it was just such changes, and it was crazy. It was a crazy time.
The timing of that's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. But I think the point of why I brought it up was canceled those meetings because they were going to be in person in Orlando, and I couldn't speak. In March, I called those folks back and said, hey, maybe we should still do the event. We can just do it on Zoom. And they were like, great idea. So that, I spoke to like a group of lawyers in Orlando, and was able to talk about and put context to the times we were in and financial planning and empowerment. So you just adjust, and you reach back and you tell people, hey, there's a new day, but we got a solution. We can still do the event. It's just going to have to be online now. And I'm going to be in Dallas, and I'm going to speak to you guys in Orlando.
And now people would think nothing of it. There's so many virtual speaking events. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? But yes, it was like, and I knew that it was like, it could be done, but they were just like, oh man, you're leaving. Oh, sorry, we got to cancel.
Yeah, it's everyone else that has to get on board.
Yes.
So I remember there's a time when doing a virtual job interview was like the worst thing ever, that you would always try to insist for like, no, you got to fly me out there. and you
Oh my
wanted the
God.
in-person job interview, and now it's like it doesn't even matter. Like,
Doesn't even matter. Can you believe it?
yeah,
Yeah.
because it was like I gotta go and they gotta meet me and see my
Yes.
face and the
I gotta
expressions,
see.
and it's
Yes.
like, yeah, and like I need to feel they invested in me, flying me out there, and it's interesting how times have
Oh,
changed.
so many, yeah. And in just 5 years. And I think we're about to go through another change. I think things are gonna change even more again. And we're gonna adjust. We're resilient, And so yeah. So it's
Oh yeah, so along those lines, like, do you want to talk anything about that and all the different things you have going on? Because I know we went over a little bit, but I want to give you a chance to tell everyone all the things you have going on in business and life, if you want to. And yeah,
yeah. So I have a YouTube channel now. Yay.
yes,
And so along those lines of changing and adjusting to the changing times, a couple weeks ago I did do a video on that. It's like my longest video. So I had so much to share on that. So I'll let folks, go ahead and jump on that. But you can type out Shehara Wooten STEM Pros, and I don't know if you have show notes, but I can definitely leave the link for the YouTube channel
yeah, I've shown up.
for that. Yeah, so I can leave it there. But yeah, so basically, again, my goal and my mission is to help 100 Black women in STEM with their financial planning and financial empowerment. So really, I'm looking for folks that meet that. They're in that stage of life where they're just kind of like, I need assistance. I need the education, but I also need that accountability, and I need that coaching as well. So so that's what I'm offering out there. And I just say follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on YouTube. Those are the main platforms that I'm on right now. And those are the main projects that I'm working on right now. That's really the biggest thing right now for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and she's very active on both of them. And
Yeah.
I like your philosophy too. It's like whatever you do it really, really well. You're not going to
Oh,
do like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and everything. And like
thank
I'm
you.
doing group and I'm doing individual and I'm doing a mastermind. It's like, oh,
Oh man. Well, it's draining to do it all too.
yeah. And that quote you're talking about, I've heard a similar quote. What is it? Like dispersed focus is like just, it's hard to
Yes.
build any momentum in
Yes.
in anything if you're not good at something. And they give the example of like, Tony Robbins does everything. He does hands, but that's Tony Robbins. That's different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different, and he has a staff too. So, there we got to put things in context from that standpoint too.
Yeah.
But yeah, my word for the year was focus last year, and I've moved that into this year too. And so not everything is good, right? I mean,
Yes. Like
maybe
too many
let's put it
opportunities.
this way. Yeah. There's a lot of good opportunities out there, but it may not be a good opportunity for you, may not be a good opportunity for
Ooh, I love that. I love that.
and so that's what I have to sift through. So my focus is not to get off track and make sure to measure everything and make sure it's in alignment, because even though, like you said, I have my, LinkedIn and my YouTube, I can still look at shiny objects like, oh, that looks really good. Maybe I should give
Yeah.
that a try.
I should
And
get back into speaking more. Or I should do this. Well, you already have a book. I was gonna say.
yeah, and I do obviously I still do speaking. So that's a part of it too. Speaking, I guess I should say that. Like if you work at a company and you want me to speak about financial empowerment, hey, I would love to chat. And then obviously the book here, I still have that going. In the meantime, Own Your Financial Narrative. It's on Amazon. So, but you know, this year, I'm just trying to stay laser focused on
No, that's
the
good.
vision and the things that I really want to do to help improve the lives of the people that I'm
I like
called
that.
to help.
No, I'm the same way too. So it's like I tell people, like, keep the main thing the main thing. Don't get
Yeah.
just like you're talking about the shiny object syndrome, and
Yes.
people are oohing and awing over other people's posts and what they're doing. It's like that's what they're doing. And
Yes.
yeah, and sometimes I'll have these networking calls, and it's interesting because they just have sometimes this very aggressive, competitive nature, like prove to me why you're doing what you're. It's like I don't really have to prove it to you. I'm very convinced of what I'm doing. I'm gonna stick to what I'm doing. I don't
Absolutely.
need to convince you to like make videos if you don't want to make videos. And it's just they have this energy like convince me. And it's like then don't do it if you don't want to do it.
Yes, yes, I'm with you on that. I am with you.
Yeah.
And everybody has strengths in different things. Like, I said, "Ooh, shorts seem really cool, YouTube shorts." But I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do YouTube shorts. I'm not gonna. So I'm gonna stay focused, right? On this is what I'm gonna do. 2025, we're gonna work this, and we're gonna make that work, and you know, grow this, because you can go 50 million directions. So I was just like, LinkedIn, YouTube, and then I do put some stuff on Instagram, but because I've had it, but my main thing is LinkedIn and I'm sorry, LinkedIn and YouTube. It's focus.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I like that because
Yeah.
it's easy to burn out with all the things and people who want to talk to you and different opportunities, but it's good to get centered. But that's one thing I think is really good about it sounds like your entire life. You've had that clarity. I think a lot of people don't sit back and figure out, I know this sounds like who they are, what do they really want, and what are they working towards? I know it sounds bad, but I think there are a lot of people when you're talking to them, they're so confused. They have
Yeah.
no idea what they really want or who they are. And it's so
Mhm.
important that people like take some time to figure that out, right? And what are you working towards?
Yes. Yes. And you're right. I didn't realize that was unique, right? But I
Yeah,
knew
it is.
I just felt like, and I remember talking to younger people, even when I was like 29, 28. When you go to college, like before you go to college, use this book, Purpose Driven Life, and What Color is Your Parachute. Figure out like what you want to be when you grow up, And but then one thing that I've also learned, because at that time I was just like, you should figure out what you want to be. But I've also learned to give yourself grace to move and pivot too. Because where you're at today, you might be and most of us are 10 years from now, you might have a completely different mindset and different things that you want to do and
Yes.
accomplish, and be okay with that. Like we only have this one life. And
Yeah,
so,
you're only wayfinding, finding out this step or two ahead.
yes.
You don't have to know the whole path, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I will tell a little funny story about you before we end because when we had lunch that second time when you were in town,
Yeah.
what's so nice is you're so used to people like where do you want to eat, and then where do you want to eat, and you sent me a calendar notice, which I love. I actually love that. A lot of
Thank
people
you.
don't know how to do calendar notices or refuse to send them. Like this, just put it on the calendar, and then
Right.
we know what time. And you picked a place, which is like so, which
Yeah.
is so refreshing because it's like it's that planner side of you. So she truly does plan. Think about that.
So funny. Somehow, and also because my diet, I have some dietary restrictions. So most people do put it on me to pick the place. So I think I just already have it like in me, like, oh, let me pick something. But what's funny is it's always been that way. But now it's even
Oh, it's funny.
more.
I
And
think people always count on me to pick the place, which is interesting because I can just because I don't know, I'm a very decisive person, but I also realize that kind of annoys some people.
what, that you pick the place?
Yes, because I think it's kind of bossy and too decisive, and it's interesting. So sometimes I'm cautious about, no, why don't you pick? Or where would you? I'm very open-minded about where I eat too. So it's just
That
funny
helps.
where it's just like I'll eat almost anywhere, but it's
That's
interesting
correct.
how yeah, it's that like deciding back and forth, and it's certain personality. Like my son has that personality where he doesn't want to pick. He's like, no, where do you want to eat, and where do you
Yeah.
want to, and it's interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, I pretty much know.
Yeah, I am too. I'm really decisive too, but I also
Yeah,
try to let people decide. But I love that about you, that little bits of it. I can see your personality and like your planner. Because I've done that
yeah.
with other people. Maybe that sounds too aggressive if they're like, especially non-business owner. I'm like, no, just give me a calendar notice, and they're like, calendar notice. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
just put on the calendar.
If it's not on the calendar, I might not make it.
See, I'm like that too. Yes.
I probably won't make it. And I had that like a snafu with my calendar at the end of last year, fourth quarter last year, and it made me, I couldn't believe it. And I missed some meetings and I just had to apologize. I couldn't believe it. So my calendar it helps me to stay on task and it helps me to do. But yeah, it was like a technical glitch and I missed some meetings. So I can't do that.
Yeah. It's good, but see that's the type of person you should hire to be a financial planner.
Fortunately, it wasn't clients that I missed meetings on, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for being on my show, and we didn't even get to talk about everything we were planning to talk about, but it's okay. It was still a really fun conversation.
Yeah, I didn't know everything we were playing, but to me,
Oh, well, we could have talked about Black history. Well, it's okay. It just wherever the
oh
conversation
yeah,
went.
Black History Month. Well, we talked about the wealth gap, so
Yeah, yeah, and it's all over her content. If you go check out her LinkedIn posts, you've had a bunch of themed different posts about the
yes,
month and all that. So go check those out.
yes, yes, and this is live, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be posting tomorrow some more Black history content and STEM and financial empowerment. So I try to connect it all together.
Yeah, yeah. But oh no, it was so much fun talking again. It always is every time we talk, and hopefully we get to do it again. And I'm so glad I met you. And also, this is encouragement for everyone. Reach out to more people on LinkedIn. You can actually meet real people.
Absolutely. Fun, amazing people like Sandra.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let me end this. Okay. Okay. Stopping. Oh, there. Okay. Thank you so much.